Welcome to the third annual Future of Video, OTT, Pay TV, and Digital Media. My name is Elizabeth Parks, and I'm the president of Parks Associates, a market research and consulting company focused on emerging consumer technologies with a particular focus on entertainment and consumer viewing choices. We know our in-person events play a huge role in networking, visibility for leading players in the connected entertainment space, and interaction with our analyst team and key players. We wish we were seeing you in person, but appreciate you joining us virtually this year. Please share your feedback with our team on your experience. We want to thank our sponsors for supporting Future of Video, many of whom have supported our efforts for years. We're striving to bring individuals together to network and discuss the critical issues our industries are facing, particularly as we navigate this new way of doing things. We have a great lineup of speakers this week, including visionary insights from Tubi, Bloomberg Media, Verizon Media, Amazon, Revry, ESPN, and Wicket Labs. If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors in the OTT, Pay TV, and digital media space. You can interact with them by visiting the booths in the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the SwapCard platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating SwapCard, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last track of the day. For this session, we will be covering the topic of data and decision-making with regards to video services. I'm Kristen Hannock, a senior analyst here at Parks Associates, covering the entertainment space, among other areas. In terms of the agenda for today's session, I will be kicking things off with a short presentation about the role of data, particularly with regards to churn and customer acquisition and video streaming. Next, Darren Lepke of Verizon Media will be conducting a 30-minute visionary insight presentation on some of the trends that Verizon has been seeing in this area. Finally, we will hold a panel discussion on the subject of using data to acquire and retain customers, hearing from a great lineup of panelists, including Gabriel Berger from Think Analytics, Renato Bonamini of ContentWise, Michael Daly of Vindicia, and Christopher Dean of Salesforce Industries, as well as Alan Nochomowski of ISS Orca. Our discussion will run for 45 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of audience Q&A time. Again, as a reminder, if you have a question for any of our panelists, make sure you submit the question in the Q&A box to the right of your screen. Finally, we will be ending our day with networking discussions in our Zoom breakout room. Looking forward to seeing you all there. So yes, one of the major trends in the OTT video space that we've been seeing that has become very critical, particularly with regards to customer acquisition, customer engagement, and preventing churn, is using data in order to make intelligent decisions about your business practices. Services pretty much everywhere across the board want more customers, and they want to keep the customers that they currently have. As we all know, churn is higher in the OTT video space than in other markets. OTT typically has no service contracts, which is something that its customers really love, but also introduces a number of its own challenges. The good news is that OTT video subscriptions are definitely up this year. The size of the total OTT video market has expanded to 78%, so up 8 percentage points. Almost 80% right now of US broadband households have at least one OTT video service. We've seen quite a bit of growth since 2019, so 8 percentage points worth. In fact, in the beginning of 2020, the percent of people with an OTT video subscription actually surpassed the percent who subscribe to a pay TV service or to a service that offers a traditional bundle of live linear channels. OTT video has actually become the primary way that US consumers access video content. While the total user base of OTT video has expanded, we've also seen service stacking really soar to all-time highs. So this is a chart you might have seen in potentially a few of our other sessions. And the reason why we keep sharing it is just because this is such a dramatic view of how the market has changed. So we see that this year, this quarter actually, nearly a third of US broadband households have 5 or more subscriptions, or 3 or more subscriptions. That is certainly a very, very dramatic and very large percentage. Last year, about this time, only about 14% of US broadband households could say the same. We also find that an increasing percentage of consumers are adding really far more services than we would have thought. As of Q3 2020, 15% of US consumers reported subscribing to 5 to 8 services, and 7% reported subscribing to 8 or more services. So there's been talk really throughout the industry about subscription fatigue and about the potential of customers eventually hitting the wall in terms of how many services they're willing to adopt. If there is a wall there, we haven't quite seen it just yet. The market is continuing to grow, and as of right now, at least, it doesn't really show any sign of slowing down. Of course, the rapid acceleration that we've seen this year, although a continuation of overall growth, can also be largely attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic, with customers really spending a large amount of time indoors, and they, of course, turn to OTT video and other solutions to really keep themselves and their families entertained. Something else that has happened in the past year is that we've also been seeing the channels that consumers use to subscribe to OTT video services also change. Last year in 2019, almost half of consumers who signed up for an OTT video service did so via the service's website, and most of those who didn't use the service's website used the service's app. This year, 2020, we've seen that the percent of video subscriptions that have been driven through those platforms have really been cut in half. So as of this most recent third quarter, we've seen about 28% of those who subscribed to an OTT video service in the past 12 months. So the new service subscribers, new subscriptions, they have been going through what we call the aggregation platforms. So services such as Prime Video, the Roku channel, or Apple TV channels, where you can, on your connected TV device itself, subscribe to a service just by pressing a button on your remote control. So this is something that has proven to be very attractive for many consumers. It saves them time and effort having to go and actually create their own login and actually do that on a service's website. I think Steve discussed some of this morning in our panel about aggregation. And if you haven't seen that, I definitely recommend going back and taking a look. But yes, that is something that consumers really do enjoy. That also has introduced a number of its own challenges with regards to actually being able to collect user data on those viewers, and also really understand how best to acquire them as well. So it's certainly a number of changes that data-driven decision makers are going to have to really wrap their heads around. So as to why consumers are choosing to subscribe to particular services, we at Parks Associates have found that content really does remain king. Consumers are looking for really particular shows, some of which may not be available anywhere else. Some services are also really well known for particular genres of content that consumers are very much interested in. So it's really about branding a lot of the time. We've also seen that there are some other factors that are key, really. So sales and promotions have been very effective at driving these subscriptions. And of course, word of mouth or recommendations from friends and family. But also, of course, again, that services availability on the connected video platforms that customers are using. So if the service isn't there, of course, then they can't necessarily watch it. In our last track as well, Jennifer introduced the concept of hoppers. I'm going to go into maybe a little bit more detail about these consumers here. If you've just joined us and you haven't heard the term before, well, welcome. Parks Associates defines hoppers as consumers who like and highly value OTT video, but who also tend to churn and return at high rates. So according to our consumer survey data, almost about a quarter of OTT video subscribers fall into this hopper category. So they may subscribe to a service for a set amount of time, leave it, and then also eventually come back to it. We have additional research about this phenomenon featured in our upcoming subscription and churn and OTT video product. So if you're interested in diving very deep, I'd recommend that report to you. Something of note that is also here is that among those who subscribe to a new OTT video service this year, they're particularly likely to be hoppers. In fact, over a third of those who started a subscription this year fall into this category versus only about 10% of existing subscribers who didn't add any subscriptions this year. What makes hoppers unique is that they are in fact the super users of OTT video in the OTT video world. They subscribe to many more services on average than non-hoppers, but they're also much more likely to cancel these services as well, moving to the next thing. Typically, this is when they've caught up with their favorite show or series or consumed the content that they may want to watch. As 2021 approaches, the question on everyone's mind is going to increasingly become, how can I keep these new subscribers that I've gained? Retention will be more important than ever. And part of companies' retention efforts are going to have to keep these hoppers in mind, either finding out what it takes to hold on to them throughout the year, or what kind of content will best trigger them to resubscribe again. So again, using the data that you have on the customers that you have currently acquired as a good means to reach out and engage your subscriber base and really figure out what it takes to keep them coming back for more. So I think I have maybe a minute or so for some questions for the audience. So does anyone have maybe a question or two for me? Feel free to pop that into the Q&A box on your right. Okay, but yes, I think there is really a lot of value that we're seeing around data in a great many ways. There are, of course, all of these changes that we've seen with regards to the market, the changing channels by which companies can acquire customers. We've also seen it's becoming increasingly important to have your service available on all of these different devices and platforms. The platform landscape has very much changed over the past 2 years, with connected TVs becoming a very important place to be. In the US market and many other markets, of course, there are varying players critical to reach. Of course, there's Samsung, Amazon Fire TV, Roku as well, Apple TV, and then Android TV, which are all very, very important players in this market. There are a series of decisions to be made also around where you want your service to go. Making sure that you have access to the data that you need is critical, of course. But there are also these different types of arrangements that might need to be made with each player's holding onto their data. That is something that we're going to be discussing a little bit later today during our panel discussion on data and decision making. But next up, we are going to be hearing from Darren Lipke of Verizon Media, who's going to have a wonderful presentation on some of the trends that Verizon has been seeing in this market. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Visionary Insight with Darren Lepke of Verizon Media. So I think Darren is just about to join. There we are. Hello, Darren. How are you today?
Doing great, Kristen. How are you?
I'm doing well. So very much looking forward to hear what you have to say and really understanding Verizon Media's perspective here.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that was a great presentation that you gave. Some really interesting stats that jumped out at me. 31% of households with 4 or more services. That was an amazing stat for me. I think we've all heard the term, like you said, subscription fatigue, but to see that number increasing, it was certainly eye-opening. Also, the 78% of households with a single OTT service. I mean, that's a pretty interesting number as well. Just the 8% growth we've seen in 2 quarters, I think, really reflects a lot of what we're seeing in the marketplace. So thank you for that presentation. I know, first up, maybe I'll introduce myself. I'm the head of video product management at Verizon Media. You guys may know Verizon Media as the company that brings you great web properties like Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Finance, but the Verizon Media team also offers a B2B service for many of the large OTT providers that you know and love today. So, at the core of what we do, we have a video streaming engine which ingests live channels, live events, on-demand content, and then delivers it across our content delivery network. We also provide some web security features as well. But really, underneath all of that is the Verizon network, a global network for delivering content to any user, any device, anytime, anywhere. And like I said, doing it for some of the largest OTT providers in the market today. So, when we got invited to do this talk, the challenge was to really think about what are the biggest trends that are impacting the market today, specifically with the pandemic having such an outsized effect on people's plans. So today I'm going to go over 4 big things. Number one, just some big trends around what we're seeing around usage, some kind of baseline expectations of all viewers. Some of the new and interesting ways that OTT service providers are innovating in ways we haven't seen before, as that competition for viewer attention grows and as more viewers start to subscribe to more services, and ultimately getting it back to the topic of the day, which is underlying all of these things, how does data play a role in this ecosystem and subscriber growth. I'm going to focus particularly on the world of advertising and ad-supported OTT services. But obviously our esteemed panel later in the day will also talk more about data as an impact on SVOD services and subscriber churn. So to start with here, topic one, Kristen put up a lot of great slides. I don't think we need to repeat more information here, but much like her charts show the increase in OTT subscriptions and consumption overall, we at Verizon Media across all the different services that we power have seen a huge increase in usage this year. So there's maybe a slight dip in sports content, in late Q1, early Q2, as many of the sports leagues we know and love had to shut down and retool for the pandemic that we were facing. But overall, the increase in usage has gone up. The initial kind of trough for sports was filled with more content around news, obviously a big increase in on-demand and premium content as well. But since then, we see a big rebound in usage to kind of pre-pandemic projections and even beyond, as people kind of settle into the new normal of being at home, consuming a lot of content, across a lot of different services. So, our data and kind of our anecdotal evidence, definitely shows that, OTT services and video consumption on the internet continues to grow faster than ever. When you think about, what's driving some of those, some of that growth we saw on the charts, what are the factors for, choosing an OTT subscription service or any service in general. Many of the things we take for granted, from a technical perspective, were primary on that list. Things like ensuring that content is delivered in extremely high quality. So 4K HDR content, no buffering. All these things are kind of the baseline expectation that customers have today. The novelty of OTT is worn off. People are expecting equivalent quality from their OTT services as they see in their pay TV services. So certainly, as a service provider, we strive to ensure that all of our customers can deliver, with the best quality content. The user experience itself needs to be, robust and feature rich. You have to be able to, easily discover the content that you're looking for. So that can be, things like recommendations, having a series of titles or shows being, presented to you or suggested to you. That's even kind of migrating forward into things like personalized linear channels, where now customers are expecting that, you're not looking to a programmer for the network to decide what you should watch in what sequence. Now people want to have their linear channel experience kind of programmed to their individual desires. So, between the UX experience and the discovery experience, those are obviously kind of baselines for what constitutes a great service. And ultimately, multi-device support. We also take for granted sometimes that content can be consumed anywhere on any device. And when things are not available first, that's often the first times that we see customers complain, is when they can't get their favorite service on a particular mobile device or on a connected TV. We saw this with Quibi when it first launched earlier this year, and not being able to watch on connected devices. Even with the best intentions of creating short form content targeted for mobile devices, there was still a consumer expectation that when they weren't on the go, or when they were stuck at home as a result of a pandemic, that people could watch it on every screen. So when we're thinking about what are some of the decisions that consumers are making around which service they should subscribe to, obviously we saw the top of the chart being the content they want, but there are some underlying kind of technical features which kind of prop up the rest of the experience that we really can't forget as a service provider. Next up, we've certainly seen attempts at innovation, or kind of small strides in innovation around the actual OTT experience in recent years. We've always talked about, as technologists and as innovators, we've talked about how the television watching experience could be changed, how we could go from a lean back, purely relaxing experience to more of a lean forward or more interactive experience. And I think those things have always been secondary to the overall viewing experience. But I think this year we've certainly seen, as competition heats up, as you're trying to attract the eyeballs for your customers, that things like innovation around low latency and interactivity continue to grow. We also saw a couple things in those charts about where subscribers are looking for their services. And that speaks to the emergence of these aggregation platforms, digital MVPDs. These are all new players in the ecosystem where, from a technical perspective, OTT service providers now have to also not only publish to their own apps, but publish to all of these extra endpoints and destinations. So syndication is becoming extremely important, and the monetization strategy as well. Even with maybe subscriber fatigue, subscription fatigue being a little bit in the background, there's still an opportunity to innovate around the business model itself, to find ways to capture as much revenue as possible through certain things like hybrid models. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But just to go back to the interactivity feature for a bit, one of the great examples that we've seen recently, even within Verizon Media and the Verizon Media family, is innovation around social experiences. So going back to the pandemic, where you can't really leave the house, or you shouldn't be leaving the house. Certainly for sports, you're not going into the stadiums and watching like you used to. That social component of watching a match with your friends or watching football on Sunday morning at the pub, that's missing for a lot of folks. So what we've seen in experiences like Yahoo Sports, they've taken the opportunity to leverage innovation around real-time streaming, number one, and social experiences altogether to combine and build what they call this watch together experience. So in this case, you can log into the Yahoo Sports app. You can watch NFL games on Sunday mornings, Thursday nights, Monday nights, just like any week. But while you're doing that, you can also invite 4 of your friends to come and watch with you. So you watch together. You invite them through an SMS invite on your mobile device, and then literally bring your friends into a video chat room where in real time, all 4 of you are not only synced up in your conversation on video chat, but also have the game synced up on your device. So again, those kinds of innovations around social viewing, I think, have been talked about, but often on the back burner. And with the fan experience changing and the viewing experience changing, this certainly has led to some interesting innovations. And the great news is, not only does this provide greater fan engagement and more loyalties, more reason to tune in, we're actually seeing fans watch longer. So the average watch together viewer watches something like 50 to 60% more minutes of the game if they're watching it with their friends and having a chat at the same time. So for broadcaster and OTT services, that means better loyalty, less churn, and ultimately more ad revenue when you can get your users to stick around for a longer period of time. So some really interesting things there on the innovation front. And then we'd also briefly touched on the syndication and revenue model pieces. So not only are aggregation platforms like Amazon Prime and Roku coming together, but there's also this new array of destinations like digital MVPDs, where things like YouTube TV, things like Pluto, like Fubo, Philo, these are all ad-supported subscription services where broadcasters, cable channels, content owners can now have an additional point of distribution for their audience, ways to reach new audiences that they may not have had before if they were strictly going to, say, the Fox Sports app or the ESPN app. Social media is also emerging as an important destination for fan loyalty and engagement, but also marketing and audience acquisition. So you may not be posting the entirety of your sports match or your movie content on social media, but you can certainly leverage those endpoints as ways to promote your content, to give kind of teasers or previews of what's to come. So reaching these additional platforms is certainly key when we're talking about user acquisition and growth. And then finally, we also talked a little bit about monetization. So yes, subscriptions certainly drive revenue. Some of the largest OTT providers are primarily OTT or primarily SVOD services. Of course, Netflix comes to mind as the 800-pound gorilla in this market. But for everybody who's not Netflix, with the margins being where they are, where costs being where they are, it's important to extract revenue from multiple points in the user journey. So this shouldn't be a surprise. This is what pay TV has done for 50 or 60 years now, where they have a combination of subscription services and advertising. In the OTT world, that's no different. Like, yes, you can survive as a pure AVOD or SVOD player when you've reached a certain amount of scale, but as you're building and growing, it's important to have a hybrid model where you have multiple revenue streams that can support your service. So all of this talking is just kind of general, but this is supposed to be about a panel about data. So let's dive into that briefly. Data is the underpinning of every single aspect of an OTT service, and as a service provider like Verizon Media, our job is to collect and aggregate and correlate all the data that we see from all points of the user experience. So for us, that means yes, certainly capturing quality of service and experience monitoring. So the things like video quality metrics, rebuffering, stream startup times, those are keys to optimizing our delivery and understanding where the consumers are getting the best experience. Session or viewing metrics, so pulling in individual data points from the users themselves, like their location, their device types. All of these things help us inform how best to deliver content to the user. Should for instance, if a user is on a mobile device, perhaps they shouldn't be sent a 4K stream, because the impact of 4K video on a mobile device is much more diminished than when you're, say, watching it on a 70-inch television, right? So having the feedback on the actual user session itself is super important to collect. Ad performance metrics. So if you're thinking about an ad service, there's ways to optimize your delivery and make sure that you're choosing the right ads for each viewer that optimizes and maximizes the revenue there. Aggregated user data around things like their behavior, their preference, their viewing history, things that you can go tie into a recommendation service is also important to capture as viewers are navigating between services or within a service. And then ultimately, making sure that when you're collecting data on the users around things like the ads, ad completion rates, did they get all the way through the ad? Did they finish it? If a user clicks off onto a particular ad in kind of a desktop or interactive experience, are you capturing the attribution for that particular experience? It's important that that data is also captured and factored back into an ecosystem where it can be actioned upon and used to improve the user experience and to drive more revenue. And the reality is the ecosystem of where that data lives is pretty broad. There's multiple players in the data ecosystem when it comes to ad-supported OTT services. There is yes, the underlying platform like Verizon Media that collects and has all the touch points into all the possibilities for data collection, but there's also ad insertion vendors and ad decisioning systems and programmatic marketplaces where ad bids go out, where all the data has to be kind of shaped into the right package and then ultimately kind of farmed out and delivered to each one of these partners to ensure that ad insertion is optimized and ultimately as your service grows that you can scale up with the viewers, right? So making sure that your ad decisioning system has all the right data points around who your user is, what they like to see, where they are based. So if somebody who's on the West Coast doesn't get served an ad from a mattress store on the East Coast, like all of these things are important to make sure that the user experience is really optimized, and again, revenue is optimized. So I'll give you one specific example in a little bit of depth here. There's a new and emerging technology called Prebid. So Prebid is a way that OTT services are leveraging data to optimize their ad yield, which means for every single ad that they show, how can they maximize the dollar value that advertisers are willing to pay for that ad. So today in a traditional programmatic experience, if you are a big OTT service provider, you have an ad partner, somebody like a Google or a FreeWheel or a SpotX, who are coming in and providing you the opportunity to run your kind of pre-sold campaigns, but also then go out to a programmatic marketplace to have people bid on the inventory that you're showing on your service. And today, those partners are great. They function really well from a holistic perspective, but from a programmatic perspective, sometimes the available marketplace that these partners like Google or FreeWheel bring to bear are limited. They don't represent the total amount of demand that you see in the marketplace. They don't have every single advertiser ready to go to bid on your particular OTT service. So what Prebid does is it opens up a new set of demand partners where prior to going to your primary ad decisioning system, you can actually go out to the marketplace and say, hey, I have an opportunity to show an ad to a female 18 to 36 based on the West Coast, watching on their connected device. Is there anybody else out there who would want to bid on that? And you get a response back from a bigger marketplace of advertisers. You're able to bring in that bid and factor it into the decision that your ad server is making. And then ultimately you get to decide as a content owner and OTT service provider, do you want to take the highest possible bid that you can get, maybe even if it comes from your pre-bid partner, or do you want to get through your programmatic inventory, or do you want to get through your pre-sold inventory first? It's really just a way to give more flexibility to your viewers. And at the end of the day, it can also have some benefits for your viewers. I think we've all gone through the experience of watching an OTT service, especially an ad-supported one, where you're constantly seeing the same ads over and over again. When you open up the total number of advertisers that can bid on a particular viewing experience, that means you can diversify the demand. You can get more ad creative actually into your viewing experience to help eliminate some of that ad fatigue. If nothing else, putting your content out and your viewers out into the bigger marketplace allows you to understand what the value is outside of your own partners. So it's one more data point for you as a business owner and operator to understand, how you should value your content. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, it's all about money, right? How do you maximize the ad space and choose the highest value content? So so when you think about data, just remember that as we move forward, as you go through your day, yes, there are these core sources of data between viewing, quality of experience, user psychographic demographic data, your ad performance data. All of these things factor into a very complex system, which can then be applied in different ways to ultimately help you make more money as an OTT service provider. And for us, we as Verizon Media, we make that very simple for our viewers. There's folks out there who are trying to piece together all of these different data sources and platforms. Themselves, they're trying to get their own engineering teams to build a comprehensive view of that data. We find, and our customers tell us every day, that having a single platform provider like a Verizon Media to tie all those things together in a seamless way makes their lives easier. And ultimately, we then can do very specific things like very targeted or personalized advertising for viewers based on real-time data, the stuff we're getting back in real time, but also some of the historical data that we also collect and aggregate across all of our customers. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of insight into how data operates in the advertising ecosystem. I guess we can take a few minutes here to answer any questions if we have any from the audience.
Sure. I think we have a few questions in for the audience, and thank you, Darren, for that wonderful presentation. So let's see. We have somebody who's interested in Verizon's view on the future of esports and whatever you have to share about esports.
Yeah, esports is a really interesting market. We talked about innovation as being a big driver of subscriber growth. And if you think about the different ecosystems of content within the OTT space, being traditional premium content, film and television, whether it's live sports, we really see esports at the very leading edge of innovation around user experience. The early fans of esports have grown up in an environment where they expect number one, the video and latency to be extremely low. They want to see the events happening as they happen as quickly as possible. You also see much more interactivity in esports. There's an expectation from viewers that they can, at least at minimum, chat with each other in real time as the game is going on. And in some cases, they can even chat with the participants of the esports match, and in some ways have an effect on how the events unfold in front of them. So for us, we see esports really driving and pulling along some of the more traditional businesses. And I think as we move forward, we'll see more traditional content types be more like e-gaming as viewers of this next generation grow up and want more interactivity in their content viewing experience.
Yes, I think I have to agree with you. I think one of the interesting things we've been seeing over the past few years is a lot of sports betting kind of making its way into different types of sports streaming content. So looking for different types of interactive experiences along those lines. And of course, those are also very, very heavily data-driven. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Yahoo Sports app falls under the Verizon Media wheelhouse.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and I believe Yahoo Sports has been doing some very interesting things in terms of its partnerships with others in the space as well.
Yeah, for sure. Look, wagering and gaming, have the regulatory challenges at the moment. Obviously, I think the lawmakers in the U.S. specifically are loosening up, and we're seeing more and more states allowing things like online wagering and gambling, and we expect that to unfold over the next couple of years and accelerate. But really, there's some intermediary steps that we can build on today to put the foundations in place for something like wagering, right? Like fantasy sports has been a big part of the sports ecosystem for many, many years, right? Predicting what's going to happen on the next play. Is it going to be a run or a pass? Is it going to be a ball or a strike? All of these things can be gamified now, and we can build the mechanisms and the real-time and protocols and the interactive elements today and use them for more of kind of a fantasy experience. But when the regulatory landscape around wagering unlocks, then I think we'll all be ready to really jump in and take advantage of what everyone sees as number one, a great way to increase revenue for content owners, but also just a great way for fans to be more engaged and more locked into the games that are happening in front of them.
So yeah, it certainly sounds like a lot of potential with that market. So we have another question in from the audience. So they are interested in maybe going a little bit more in depth about the ad bidding process you described. They're interested especially in how prevalent it is today.
Yeah, pre-bid is certainly an emerging technology. It's kind of evolved from the world of header bidding on the web, which is a kind of a very similar technology. Pre-bid has a couple benefits that are really exciting for people. Number one, we talked about getting outside the walled gardens of these big ad ecosystems to, reach a more diverse set of demand partners, more advertisers. The other great thing that people appreciate is that the pre-bid technology itself, the thing that actually runs the auctions and goes out and finds this inventory, is open source, number one, and kind of fully transparent in terms of how these auctions and decisions are being made when you kind of go out ahead of your typical demand partner. So it at least gives the sense to content owners that they have a full view and full transparency into how these decisions are being made, and you can understand why a particular ad partner was chosen. Versus, again, some of these walled garden providers where, that decision about how they choose a particular demand partner and whether or not they truly optimized, the CPM for that particular bid, that's a little more opaque inside of those bigger systems. So we certainly see that technology start to be more prevalent. There's other, providers in the marketplace, folks like Xandr, who are also kind of getting into that space. But the OTT world is maturing. We're getting away from the early days where, just having an OTT service was good enough and the novelty of it was enough to say, that's success. Today, there are, very mature kind of profit and loss, decisions that are being made where, the focus is optimizing revenue, optimizing profits. And as such, we expect more of these technologies like pre-bid to start rolling out in a bigger way.
Yes, and there's, I believe, over 230 different OTT video services in the U.S. market, so certainly quite a bit of choice there for customers if they aren't happy with your solution.
For sure.
So we, I believe, have time for just one more question. We have an audience member who is interested in learning a bit more about Connect ID for replacing third-party cookies.
Yeah, that's a great question, Christian. So there are some recent regulatory and business decisions that are being made around the web cookie. So web cookie has been this text file attached to every web browser since the beginning of the internet, which basically allowed different websites to remember or record or capture parts of a user's information in order to personalize their experience, to serve them particular ads. Is really kind of a lightweight identity system that websites and services use to track users. There's been some decisions to remove the cookie from the equation. There's obviously privacy challenges. Apple has certainly kind of led the way from the browser perspective in Safari around removing cookies, and so there are going to have to be emerging systems in order to continue to have some sense of identity and who the viewers are in order to best target these ads. And so at Verizon Media, we have a program called Connected, where independent of the actual browser technology or the mobile app itself, we'll be able to, in a very safe, secure, and privacy-centric way, be able to keep a record of the ads that you're viewing and ultimately tailor the experience, based on your preferences for privacy. So Connected is just our way to address some of the technical and marketplace challenges to how ads are targeted at users.
Okay, very neat, very neat. Fortunately, I believe that's all that we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining us, Darren. I think that was a wonderful, wonderful insight presentation. Very happy to learn about Verizon Media's take on all of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen.
Yes, and so next up, we have our panel discussion with a great lineup of panelists. When was I muted? Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our panel discussion on using data to acquire and retain customers. So we have a great lineup of panelists here today to discuss some of these topics that we've brought up. So I would love to introduce Gabriel Berger first up, who is CEO of Think Analytics. Gabriel, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hope you're having a great day here. My name is Gabriel Berger. I'm CEO of Think Analytics. And so I'm running the company here, and we're a little bit about us. We are the most widely deployed personalized content discovery platform for the tier 1 guys. So this could be legacy pay cable operators, those cable operators or pay cable operators that also have a tethered OTT experience, be a pure mobile play. It really run the gambit. Companies like iPlayer on BBC. You have Deutsche Telekom, HBO Latam, etc. So we do this with 80 plus customers. We do it in scale. We're doing it in 38 countries, and we do it in 43 languages. So we're not only multi-language, we're multilinguistic to really be able to capture the nuances of different types of languages. This is really important because even if you think about your own content priorities and ingestion and decisions of what you're going to watch, more and more you're seeing more and more content not just leave the United States, but more in a U.S.-centric standpoint, but also coming back into the U.S., which is not something that's going to ebb. It's just going to increase. We're not called Think Recommendations. We're called Think Analytics. This is really the manifestation of what we do. This is all about being able to personalize content on a multi-device manner and include all the tools of editorial, curation, business rules, insights, and that's really important in analytics. I would make the supposition that actually maybe we're all awash in a lot of data. To have actionable insights may be important. And this is certainly also in the context of content discovery. That's the lens in which we look at things. There are other data sets you can bring in and other types of analytics that also make for a very interesting exercise. Case in point, if we look at churn prediction or churn risk analysis, someone that doesn't take a recommendation has a very high probability of churning. An equally important data set would be the efficacy of the signal, the quality of the actual program and content from just an encoding standpoint. So all these things become important, and all these things are certainly germane to the equation as you go through that. The other thing is really what we do is data mining. This is how we started in data mining, how we combine machine learning, which is just kind of a next step into that as far as what we do. We also really work hard on what we call just the information sciences. We talked a lot about data, but what about the information about the information, right? What about the content itself? What are the semantic connections of content that we've built a huge library about already that combine all these things so you can have a nexus of data science and information science, which we think is also, super important. Scalability is something we also do. This is really important. Scalability manifests itself in many ways. One is just throughput and volume. So we're doing over 6 billion or so recommendations a day right now in these 43 languages. In a way, that's a so what, or at least ask the question, then now what? Doing that kind of throughput is a function of plumbing and planning. Most of our instances are spun up in some sort of AWS cloud or some other type of cloud, and we're rather adept at it. But then if you look at the volume, that's also very important to be able to handle the velocity, the speed. There's a premiere happening right now somewhere. That type of window of distribution and speed has totally changed. And the last, of course, is the variability, being able to customize and personalize that kind of content. We look at this overall as a business. This is very important. How do you measure success? What's conversion? How you then can take that conversion and learn and see, did someone take a recommendation? How is the efficacy of the search? And what are you trying to prove? This is very important. If you're an AVOD provider, basically spinning more recommendations over more linear channels may be important, or more important than if you're an SVOD provider, obviously. How are you measuring engagement? Click-through, or is it something where someone's buying something? This is all very important. So if you look at all these things, we've been doing this for 10 years or so, or coming up on 13, and we know exactly not how to do it also, and we know how to do it. And, the art and science of this is only growing.
So yes, certainly quite a bit to share in terms of Think Analytics, different roles, and then the different trends you've been seeing. Next, we have Renato Bonamini, who is the VP of Global Pre-Sales at ContentWise. Renato, can you share maybe a little bit about yourself and what you do at ContentWise?
Sure. Well, thank you actually for hosting us today. This has really been a great event so far. So my role today is actually VP of Global Pre-Sales. I make sure that we use our technology best when it comes in combination of our customer needs. So ContentWise, which is part of the Moviera Group, handles the analytics section of the Moviera Group itself. Moviera is a larger group where we also focus on operational performance. We focus on IT capacity planning, performances, everything that is related to making sure that your company runs smooth and well. And when it comes to ContentWise, well, the brand has been around for about 10, 12 years, and the company group is a little older now. I think we're hitting a 15 years landmark, and it all came down to being data engineers. So been working with telco companies for a very long time, making sure that we could optimize their data center, optimize their delivery, optimize their IT equipment and technologies. And one day, one of these customers came to us and suggested, "Hey guys, you're good with numbers. Can you help us be in a recommender engine?" Now, fast forward 10 years, we realized that really recommendations were the start. So what we present today is more of a larger set of features and capabilities that we call personalizations that go much beyond just the recommender engine capabilities. And we have also extended the portfolio of the platforms and solutions that we provide to cover also the ability to improve your metadata workflow. That's what we call Metadata Foundry. We realized while working on personalization that the quality and accuracy of metadata was simply not sufficient. So doing over and over projects and engagements where we had to fix the metadata situations and we had to assess and analyze the quality, we realized that there was a need for Metadata Foundry, which became a metadata hub to make sure that you can actually have the metadata to sustain the personalization point of view. All of this is tied back to our root in analytics. Again, we are really data engineer at heart. So the analytics part is where we understand whether what we are doing actually works. A lot of times we work with marketing teams, we work with product owners, and there's plenty of ideas on what to do. So the goal is also to make sure that you can actually understand what's happening. Very often I see companies that take the direction of, we want to build the best algorithm, the one that can predict exactly what you're doing at exactly the right moment. That's honestly kind of boring. So you want to make sure that you actually analyze and measure what really matters from a business perspective. So there's a multitude of KPIs that you want to take a look at, not just the ability of having the best algorithm in place.
Certainly sounds like a lot of potential there. Thank you, Renato. And next is Michael Daly, who is the Global VP Solution Evangelist of Vindicia, which is a part of Amdocs Media. Michael, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, hi, thanks ever so much. As it says, I'm Mike Daly, and I work for Vindicia, which is part of the Amdocs Media Group. And the Media Group provides a real end-to-end solution, something called Market One, which covers everything from being able to deal with the identity management and personalization for customers as they're signing up to their services. It also deals with the subscription and billing management and payment management side as well, which is the area that Vindicia focuses on and which I've focused on for probably far too many years at the moment. And we also are able to deal with the partnership side as well. So pre-built partnerships and integrations with other vendors that really allows customers to kind of push out and extend their customer base without actually having to do that organically. But on the billing side, we're really focusing, and the way that I work with the customers today is to understand what are their problems, what are their challenges, and to look at the innovative ways that people are approaching certainly the changing times that we see ahead of us at the moment, in terms of what's the right kind of billing models that they want to introduce, what's the kind of innovation that's going to be important there. And certainly billing is quite key to any business. It's where we get the revenue from. So being able to understand what are the technologies and what is the data that we can use to really be able to deal with things like failed payments. A lot of money has been invested on acquiring these customers and making sure that they're happy with the service and keeping them in that service. So should there be some kind of issue that happens with their subscription, with their payment that isn't of their making, then how can that be dealt with automatically? How can we use the data to find the most appropriate remedy to keep them as a customer, to keep that revenue flowing, and to hopefully get them to use even more elements of a service? So it really is looking after that billing lifecycle management, if you like, and all of the data and all of the analytics that goes around that to really ensure that you're providing the customers with the choice and the personalization they need, as well as automatically dealing with the kind of failures that have often been seen as a cost of doing business, but which actually can be used to increase revenues.
Yeah, so it's very good. I think I recently had an issue where one of my cards expired. They sent me a new one, and of course the billing all of a sudden didn't work for my OTT video services, which seems like something that could be kind of more easily addressed with a technological solution. So very cool, very cool. Next up, we have Christopher Dean, who is the VP and GM of Media and Entertainment at Salesforce Industries. Christopher, can you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and what you do at Salesforce?
Yes, thank you, and really appreciate being here, and happy holidays to everybody as we approach that approach this time. So I'm the general manager of the Media Cloud at Salesforce, and Media Cloud is one of the 12 vertical markets that Salesforce is building out in Salesforce Industries. And Salesforce Industries in the Media Cloud takes Salesforce's C360 platform, at its core, which is sales and service and marketing and commerce cloud, and all of the other capabilities, including Tableau and Datorama, and builds industry-specific solutions on top of that, in this instance for media and entertainment. And the whole idea is to deliver frictionless and personalized B2C and B2B experiences. So, and we let our customers deploy faster by delivering purpose-built media apps. And those, in this instance, include full subscriber lifecycle management for video and OTT. It includes advertising, sales. It includes content rights and monetization and commerce capabilities. And those come with pre-built integrations, a media and entertainment data model where we've done the extensions already needed for Salesforce to address the media and entertainment market. And really that allows you to deploy a lot more quickly. And it's flexible and it's scalable. So these solutions, these applications also come with a library of pre-built and downloadable business processes that are declaratively configurable, all again built on a trusted platform with our single source of truth. So as we're talking about data today, we help eliminate data silos. We bring first and third party data together around your customer, brought in from the sales channel, the service channel, marketing, commerce, and other channels, and deliver that at scale across a consistent user identity. And then finally, we have a collection of systems integrators globally and ISV partners, as well as media industry experts to help deliver all these solutions.
Very neat, very neat. Thank you for sharing. Next up, we have Elaine Nochimowski, who is Chief Technology Officer at Viasys Orca. Elaine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there?
Yes, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Elaine Nochimowski. I'm the CTO of Viasys Orca. Viasys Orca is a global provider of OTT and TV platform solutions. We have deployments in over 35 countries. And we've been in the business for more than 20 years, trying to address the changing and complex needs of video service providers. Viasys Orca is part of the Orange Group, a big global group, and I would say that as a European player, our solutions are both data-enabled by design. Okay, so we address natively the monetization needs of our customer and GDPR compliant by design. So we try to address the privacy needs of our customers. Okay, so we've been offering for the past years a very wide range of monetization solutions, starting with content recommendation, data analytics, personalization solution, of course, and targeted advertising. I want to mention as well that as I'm based in Israel, so it is the middle of the night. It's midnight now in Israel, so I hope it won't be felt too much in my answers to you, Christians. Yes, and I'm very glad to be here with you today.
I'm very glad to have you, and no worries, certainly. That is a very, very late working day. We appreciate you making time to be here with us. So yes, I think next I'm going to just go directly into our panel discussion. So we have a lot of ground to cover. I'm very much looking forward to hearing your perspectives on this topic. So we're here today to really discuss and dig into how to use data to attract, engage, and retain customers. Each of your companies really does focus on a different aspect of this. Either in terms of the solutions that you offer or in terms of the purpose behind those solutions as well. I'm interested in learning why some of you really work in this space and what really made your companies hone in on this market and decide to tackle it. Michael, maybe what can you share about Vindicia and this space as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really started back in the late 90s, the area that we wanted to focus on. The founders of the business were very much in the whole sort of Napster e-music side of the world, when subscriptions were quite young in that respect across the internet. And when they moved from that kind of business, they recognized that there needed to be a much more coherent way to be able to manage subscriptions, to securely manage payment methods, and then provide insight on that. So when they then founded Vindicia, that's really what their focus was going to be on. How can we make a platform that's a lot easier for people to really manage that whole subscription life cycle. There are obviously many aspects to the services that are out there today, and we're all representing different elements of that on the panel today. But really, from our point of view, the billing side was the area that they had the most experience in. That's where they'd struggled and had the most problems. And that's where they really felt that their experience and what they'd learned could be brought to bear. So over the last sort of 15 years, the business has really grown into understanding that whole billing space and trying to come up with innovative ways of making it easier for people to be able to, large and small, take their business, innovate very quickly, deliver something very rapidly, and also get rid of a lot of the complexity that's often been associated with managing subscriptions and payments. So with over 160 million subscribers, and I think it's about 280 million payment methods on the platform now, that certainly provides a lot of data into what's going on globally in our customers' businesses.
Yes, so certainly a lot of data kind of being dragged through that platform, and a lot of potential to improve businesses. Christopher, can you share maybe a little bit about Salesforce and Media 360?
Sure. I think everybody knows Salesforce well. It's the #1 CRM platform in the world at this point, and it started to expand by adding service on top of its core sales capabilities, and then adding Marketing Cloud, and then adding Commerce Cloud, and now Data and Analytics and Tableau and MuleSoft, and now collaboration with Slack and a variety of others. So it's an extremely powerful horizontal platform. That's both its strength and its weakness. You can build anything on it, right? And so and Salesforce has quite a large media and entertainment business in terms of installed base, having sold Sales, Service, and Marketing Cloud. But in order to really deliver complete solutions, previously our customers had to customize both the data model and build a number of business processes in Apex. And that leads to a brittle environment that isn't flexible, isn't as scalable. And that's the whole goal behind the Media Cloud, which is let's do all those customizations for you and productize them in the data model. Let's give you a platform where you can do process automation. Let's build a library of business processes that we can all anchored on top of industry-specific software modules like our media product catalog and our media CPQ engine and our media order management engine and our contract lifecycle management engine. And let's package those together into out-of-the-box applications that you can deploy a lot more quickly, that you can take the benefit of all of the Salesforce innovation plus the Media Cloud innovation, and ultimately operate at a much lower cost. So it's speaking in the language of our industry for our media and entertainment customers, and delivering end-to-end applications that are powerful, that have those extensions built into them.
Mm-hmm. Very neat, very neat. So one of the big topics that we've been talking about today is also about churn and reducing churn and about customer retention. I think, Gabriel, can you maybe share a little bit about Think Analytics' approach to this, and also really what is the secret sauce here?
Sure. As far as what we call churn prediction and churn risk analysis, again, we look at it through the lens of personalized discovery. So if we are proffering up these 6 billion decisions a day or more, what do they mean? Is someone taking the recommendation? That may be obvious. If they never take a recommendation, that's probably a problem. We're also seeing that by inference, if you are only taking movie recommendations, this actually may be a factor where you will churn, because movies can become somewhat commoditized and they can be seen, particularly in these areas of OTT siloing and takedown of content. That's also really important. That could also be a variable. So we do look at it through that particular lens. The secret sauce of what we do are, I think, two things. One is just best practices, to just measure, and it's kind of boring, but just measuring when you start in the beginning of the right catalogs, the right avail windows, with all the right information that's clean. That's equally important, if not more important, than an algorithm, which I think Renato mentioned as well. It's not just about the algorithm. So it's that those semantic connections are the most important. And then it's that best practices followed by immediately, how do you learn? So if you look at what's happened over the last, call it 10 years or so, and even our own business, in the competitive landscape, people made a decision of who they wanted to go with or build something, and they kind of moved on. That recommendation box was kind of checked. And now it's a living, breathing thing. And less, and I think this is what Chris was saying, less in terms of the data scientist is now in the hands of product managers, video product managers, people making decisions. And so these things that were very problematic from a technical standpoint now have to be dovetailed into, let's say, a single API to make it very usable and to be more of a business. So I think that's the biggest change. And the other part of the change is, if you're a US SVOD customer, I think the number is you have available about 90,000 hours of content a month to look at, which would take you 10 years. So I think we've adapted accordingly. I think it's also our mindset of how you do it right to begin with that's really set us apart, best of breed.
Mm-hmm. So certainly a lot of content to go through right there. Christopher, this is something that Salesforce does as well. Can you maybe talk to some of the points that Gabriel was speaking about?
Sure. If we sit and we take it up a level and we look at the phase of the life cycle of a customer in any real subscription, in really any subscription service, we have the way we bucket it in is we have the attraction phase, the acquisition phase, engagement, and ultimately the retention phase. And how we're applying the data that we have at hand and the fact that we need an infrastructure and a system underneath us that can unify the data that we have at hand from our behavior is critical. So taking, for example, in the attraction phase, if we know that 25 to 45-year-old men in California are leaning towards science fiction, how do we turn around and use the data at hand in a DMP, for example, a data management platform, to go look for lookalike audiences and to try to target and then acquire new users? And then from another data perspective, once I've acquired that user, how do I make sure that I've got that user onboarded effectively and beginning to consume content and engaged effectively? Because you can see churn through that cycle of getting users onboarded, and even more so as it skews towards like AVOD services versus paid SVOD or TVOD services, getting people onboarded quickly, understanding the flow and the steps associated with that onboarding driven by past behavior and by data is absolutely critical. And then turning that into the engagement side. So I like British dramas, and I finished the last episode of the latest season of The Crown this week. So the underlying platform should know that based on my affinity and based on what I have consumed, it can turn around and make recommendations for additional British dramas as opposed to science fiction. So we see data as the lifeblood of everything throughout the entire user journey. And as we were talking about before, if we have a predictive score that says it looks like that individual is going to churn based on what they're either doing or they're not doing, then we need to be able to drive a proactive win-back journey and bring them back into the fold and get them re-engaged. And then the last thing that I would say to that question that a lot of people haven't thought much about yet is let's go make sure and we give the tools to our customers to take that first party consumption data and behavior about affinity and what I like and use that to inform your B2B side of your business. If you've got an AVOD service and an ad-driven service, we need to be taking our first party data to be maximizing the value of our ad inventory and ultimately driving our advertising business. So we really see it across that entire life cycle.
Very cool, very cool. And then Mike, what is Vindicia's perspective on this?
Yeah, so we're obviously looking at this from a billing point of view, and I think it's interesting to understand that there are obviously different types of churn. So we end up with active churn and passive churn, how we look at it. So the active churn side of things are people whose behavior, people whose use of the platform is indicating that they're probably looking to leave, they're probably looking to move away for some reason, or they're actively coming in and saying, look, that's it, I'm done, I don't want to do any more with the particular service. But then there's the passive churn, which is where the customer wants the service. They're very happy with what they're seeing. They want to continue, and then something happens to interrupt their ability to access the service. And normally this is through some kind of payment failure. So what we look and focus on a great deal is how do we identify what those payment failures are, and then what's the best remedial action to actually get that transaction to go through without any input, without having to interrupt the user, without having to reach out to the user, and so that they keep their experience, they keep their momentum in the service, there's no interruption, but you're dealing in the background with that passive churn event in a way that allows them just to continue with the service. So from our point of view, we're really looking at the kind of data, not only for what are the best bundles and packages that our customers are using and how should they be delivered, but also things like, well, based on where they are in the country and in the world, what country they're in, based on the payment method they're using, based on the service they're consuming, what is the likelihood that there is going to be a passive churn event? Or if there is one, what's the most appropriate way of actually dealing with that? And by doing that, sort of dealing with that passive churn event, we've found that we're really starting to see customers, certainly this year, but it's happened previously as well. It's been a theme we've seen for many years, is that recovery from that passive churn event actually helps the customers grow. Just increasing your ability to recover people by 5% in a month for a company could actually see over a couple of years their user base grow by 42%. And all you've done is you just recovered 5% more of your customers through things like passive churn. So we're very interested in that kind of data and how the analysis can help us deal with those sorts of issues that kind of seem hidden and don't seem important, but can have a dramatic effect on business.
Yeah, so certainly some potential there for compounding growth. So very promising.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about churn. We've talked a bit about retention. I'm interested in what some of the trends you all are seeing in the market of how companies are using data to really impact the user experience. And then Renato, I'm very interested in what content-wise has to share on this.
Absolutely. So there are three main topics that come up in a lot of conversations today. We're talking to industry leaders and tier one operators and so on. The first one is related to something that we discussed already. And I think actually Gabriel mentioned a good point, which was a ticket box. And now very often recommendations per se, which is probably what most people think about when they think of data to impact user engagement, they think of recommendations. Recommendations have become a commodity. So it's a tick in the box. Most of the time, a service owner will come up and, hey, did we put recommendations in the RFP? And there goes a checkbox, and then the requirement goes out, and yes, we have recommendations. What we do find actually in talking to users, consumers, and operators is that even the word recommendation, the carousel recommended for you, has acquired so much of a negative connotation today that people don't trust it anymore. So we need to look beyond just the recommender for you approach and look at personalization in general. For example, looking outside of the US market, there are regions globally where things are definitely easier from a design perspective because they don't have to deal with much legacy. Look at, for example, Asia Pacific. That's an example where a lot of services are just starting from scratch. They don't have a legacy to respect. They don't have set-top boxes. They can just feel free to design a new user experience all of a sudden. And that's an example where operators are taking the next step of evolution of how to use data. One good example that we have been pushing in the market for the last couple of years is, for example, the ability to personalize the pages at every level. And for example, during these hours, we have in Hong Kong PCCW Media, which is actually deploying this capability to their customer base so that when they join the service, they go beyond just looking at a recommended for you carousel, and that's all about using data, but it's actually every part of the UX entitles them to actually feel personal, feel engaged. So that's the first topic that is very important. Look beyond that. And I clearly see that the industry is divided between companies that we need a recommender engine because we have a check in a checklist, or companies that are trying to really innovate and look at personalization from a broader perspective. This comes along with a second point of the topic of discussion, which is the ability to trust the data that is made available to users. So users need to trust that the data they provide to you as an operator is used for their benefits. How do you impact user engagement? You make the user experience engaging, so funny, and it's something that people remember, not something that the people actually are scared of, or they think of, hey, I must not say something that otherwise Alexa is going to hear me and they're going to put advertisement for me on Facebook. So that's how most people perceive personalization today. Targeted advertisement hasn't helped in the way that things are conducted to perceive it that way. So trust in how you use the data, make it evident how you use it, rationalize it, explain that the way you use data is actually improving their user experience and how that's critical. And even more critical, I think you were pointing at this, Kristen, earlier when talking about, for example, the connected ID and cookies. The luxury of being able to do whatever you do as an operator with data that comes from any place is kind of over. So first-party data is becoming more and more important. I think we're growing up on experience. For example, California realized with the new Privacy Act, but also learning from European experiences on how critical and important it is to respect privacy and showing to end users. The last part of data from an impact perspective is actually something related to data, which is metadata. I clearly see a topic of discussion very often that there is a heightened attention on making sure that the metadata used to personalize is actually good. And I'm not talking about titles or actors, which are standard fields that most people are good in dealing with, but things that are able to express the quality and nature of content, mood, theme, characters. Those fields, when they are good quality, they are actually very good at allowing editorial teams to create a real engaging experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can certainly say that there are a great many consumers who might not pay attention to the actors or the directors, but they do pay attention to the feel that a movie gives them.
Right. Now we work in entertainment, so mood and themes are critical to how someone engages with the system.
Mm-hmm. Very true, very true. I think, Elaine, I'm interested in hearing what your perspective is on this, on some of the trends that you've been seeing.
Yeah, sure. So some of the trends that I want to share today are, I think some of them were mentioned by the previous speakers. But let's start from one of the biggest trends that we see in our markets. Okay, I call that a holistic approach to TV data. Okay, so historically our customer base is about operators, TV service providers that are coming from the subscription business model, and those guys are more and more realizing that there is a continuum between maximizing retention, growing ARPU, and on the other hand, the ability to monetize audiences. In other words, if you make your audience more engaged, if you do through personalization and this kind of approach, then you can more easily monetize them. For example, with third-party advertisers. I'd say it's more and more important. It's all the more important as most of those guys, either pay TV, operators or OTT pure plays, those guys, they face fierce competition, and the ability to introduce some flexibility in their business model. I call that hybridization of the business model. Complementing some premium subscription-based model with some freemium advertising funded model. Having this ability to mix and match between those, start with one, and upsell that to another one. This is where I want to go. Okay, and for that you need an holistic approach to TV data. The second point I want to emphasize is one that I think has been already mentioned by by the previous speaker about the importance of first-party data. I think we feel the same here. Okay, and once upon a time, third-party data, segmentation of the audience was all about third-party data. Okay, so today with the GDPR, CCPA, etc., the importance of first-party data is really there, because there has been a shift in terms of focus, and specifically, I would say about TV data, TV viewership data. Okay, around this specific type of data, there is a lot of potential. Okay, it's there. It's in the operator or service provider data lake. Okay, and it's for them to interpret and to extract rich insights about. Imagine you have there a flow of data that is a stream of data that is updated and can tell you a lot about your audiences in real time, almost. Daily routines, changes in daily routines. So lots of very interesting insight that you can extract, and today the providers are certainly not exploiting to the maximum. The last I think trend that I think is very important, and I think that again I don't think that anybody will contradict me, is the importance of AI. Okay, gone is the era of descriptive analytics. Okay, now the market wants predictive analytics. It's everywhere. The way you design customer journeys, you need AI. AI is at every part of the journey. And tomorrow, of course, prescriptive analytics. So these are the trends that we at VXS Orca are trying to implement in our product lines.
So yes, definitely a lot of important data there. So I think something else that I'm very interested in really learning is, so we've talked a bit about reducing churn. We talked a bit about some of the really new uses of data as well. So I'm interested in learning about maybe a little bit more about personalization and recommendations, and maybe going back to a little bit, how are they actually really helping to really improve engagement and retention? And how would you say this is so? And Gabriel, maybe you can share a little bit.
Sure. Can you? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're seeing more and more putting tools in the hands of people that can do A/B testing, can do all manner of different things. We find this to be very, very important. So how you do it, we've seen absolutely time and again that we provide a means and a way to really move the needle on engagement. And again, what is engagement? What are you trying to learn? Are you trying to sell a box set of a digital download? Well, geez, a 4% conversion would probably put you in the Marketing Hall of Fame. Are you trying to move more linear content viewing over more programmatic channels for advertising? It all depends on the level of engagement and how you want to kind of keep score. Are you looking to find out if someone took a recommendation 5 minutes after it's given, or is there an efficacy of only 24 hours of that recommendation? So there are all manner of metrics to the recommendation, but clearly, even dropping in a new type of search that we've done, we've seen just eye-popping levels of engagement of plays, of how you can then just tweak things correctly. So we're seeing over and over the ability to take a client, take a customer, and I mean, I'm telling you right now, if all of us had the same mobile device, powered by Think Analytics, we would all absolutely get a different set of personalized recommendations. Now, and this gets back to the importance of metadata. It only may be one piece of artwork over. It only may be one rail difference, but that's the whole notion. And this gets back to not just the importance of strategically of metadata, but more importantly, how you can visualize it, what you can do with it. That's the most important thing. And regarding data in and of itself, getting back to engagement, I've sat there with the head of a marketing of a big mobile provider. This guy says, look, Gabe, I have a lot of data. I can tell you how many dogs people have right now, and give you an estimate of how many dogs people have that are this mobile customer. And I said, you know what, that's right. But you can't tell me anything about the movie 101 Dalmatians. And I know everything about that. And that's the most important thing, be able to take that information to be able to put it into a data set and come out with an outcome, and to be able to weight it accordingly. So if you're watching a documentary about France, if you look at France as a bubble of a facet, that's really important. But if you look at the movie Taken, that happens to take place partially in France, that's going to be a smaller bubble. So it's not just a function of taking these types of metadata sets. If you can't score them actionably really, really sprightly, it doesn't really make much of a difference. So I see more and more learnings. I see more and more culturally the marketing people and the product people, these companies, starting to use these knobs and dials much more to really take it and humanize it. You know, if you look at something like the Razzies are kind of a stunt. It's the movies that were so bad they were good, if you will. An algorithm isn't going to pick that up. That's still human curation, really gleaned by data. And ironically enough, every time that happens, when you get a rousing announcement, guess what happens? Engagement increases. So the data was there. The manifestation from the marketing people really is what made the difference.
So yes, it certainly sounds like an opportunity to use data, but data in a way that's really being driven by human decision making. So very cool, very cool. Renato, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this. Are personalization recommendations helping to improve engagement and retention, and really how so?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the numbers are there, it's clear, and it's been proven over and over, and not just in the media space, by the way. Let's all remember the recommendation started with a typical example of fathers buying beer because it's close to diapers in supermarkets. I mean, that was like the #1 data mining exercise that actually started a whole idea of recommendations. So while the industry has been piling up numbers, and really these numbers are all over, I must talk against vendor, being one myself, never trust really the vendor's numbers on the level of increase of consumption or churn reduction. Always listen from the customers themselves. And this is because really every operator, every service is unique. So you can't compare numbers that apply to an SVOD, to an AVOD, or to a market or another region. So it's hard to give actually a number of how much, but every single time we're able to actually measure the quality of increased consumption, reduced churn, increased engagement, those are always positive, and the ROI is always there. Now, this all sounds good. Where's the bad in this? It does take a significant investment. I have to admit that it's not something that you just do casually. That's why earlier I was kind of complaining about the companies that just put it down as a box in a checklist because they don't truly believe in what the power and the effects of actual personalization is. Because as mentioned, it does take a certain level of investment. The ROI is there, is clearly there, but you have to believe in it, and you really have to invest in understanding what you're trying to do. Going back to your question on improving, what does actually improving mean? And here's something that we already touched upon a couple of times earlier. It's not so much about the algorithm. Yes, it is a data science exercise, but it's not a data science experiment. Now, trust me, as I'm an engineer, it's probably the worst attitude of doing this. And I actually am an engineer myself, so yeah, I know what part I'm coming from. We have to take a look at these from what does really improving mean? It doesn't just mean increased consumption. It doesn't just mean one KPI. So at the essence of this is the ability to, Gabriel said it correctly earlier, the ability to do A/B testing in your environment. Look at what other companies are doing, but make it yours. Understand what's working with your users, with your content, in the context of your specific service. So when you put together these three things, actually that works. And I can guarantee that every time this is done believing that personalization has a goal, this actually brings results. These results might be a few percentages. They might be 50, 60% more in terms of consumption. I do have some numbers, for example, that recently learned from one of our customers, Telecom Argentina, who was mentioning that they were able to reduce churn by 35%. And more importantly, they were looking at their Net Promoter Score, which increased 33 points. And that's a very good KPI to look at when you're thinking, is this actually what we're doing, actually improving the quality of user experience? And definitely so. There is actually one example related to don't just build algorithms. And it's a kind of a story, so indulge with me for a minute. As you probably hear by now by my Italian accent, I'm obviously Italian. I think my first and last name also gave it away pretty quickly. And there is one effect which I call the Italian mother-in-law problem, which is the first time you meet your future mother-in-law, she's going to make a very easy question. Honey, what would you like to eat? Whatever you say in that moment is what you're going to eat from that moment forward for the rest of your life. So please choose carefully. That's one issue that people that just adopt recommendation technologies always have. We're looking for the perfect algorithm that is able to estimate exactly what the user might like. We are in media entertainment. Sometimes media entertainment means a serendipity and something engaging, something new. So don't just look for the perfect estimation of what someone might be looking for. You need a mix of lean forward, lean backward. So all the good things we know, they should be applied. So don't just let it be a data science experiment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, you certainly do have to appeal to a variety of different users and different use cases as well.
Automation definitely helps. That's where you put automation in place. Now, that's the breakthrough of machine learning and AI, is to automate this one-to-one experience to everyone. Mm-hmm. But still, the guidelines on how to achieve it is not just algorithm is going to take care of that. No, it's still your human approach to it that actually guides how the AI executes it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, there's we talk a lot about AI, but I think one of the things that we all need to keep in mind is that AI is a tool that people are using, not necessarily something that is really designed for strategic thinking on its own.
Right.
And then, Christopher, I'm interested in hearing really your perspective on this as well.
Sure. Well, I think we've all made a lot of very, very good points here. Let me amplify a couple or add a couple more. So we have seen examples where personalization can increase engagement, by 50 to 75%. So we believe strongly in personalization. I agree. It's not just recommendation, but it's personalization. In fact, Salesforce bought a company called Evergage, which allows you to drive dynamic personalization and do that in an omni-channel way, in experience across other forms of messaging, whether it's email, SMS, in-app messages, or a variety of others. So being able to personalize has been proven in the industry, adds tons of value around engagement and retention. Being able to do that and reach across all of the channels that we need to bring people back into the service in an on-channel way is critical. And then, yes, more than anything else, having a machine learning or an AI engine like an Einstein or others that takes action in real time based on behavioral behavior, what I'm doing or what I'm not doing, driven by affinity scores, will lead to not a perfect algorithm. You never will get a perfect algorithm, but can adjust based on what I've been consuming recently, and then make those recommendations and personalized suggestions. So I think the points are, it's clearly there. In fact, there's also the converse of the uplift in engagement. It's like if a service, if an OTT service or any other entertainment service doesn't know who I am on a one-to-one basis or close to me, and keeps on making a recommendation or personalizes something to me that's just off the mark, consumers will actually leave that service because they get frustrated, and there is this broad war for attention out there, and clearly, if you keep on telling me to go watch these travel and these cooking shows and I'm not interested in it, it's got the reverse of good, accurate personalization and prediction. So those would be the points that I.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, 90,000 hours of content available out there, and if a service is only showing the things that I don't want to watch, there's some kind of an issue there.
Absolutely.
Right, very true. So I'm very interested. We've talked a lot about different types of data and the different roles of data. We also know that there are certainly some changes that may be on the horizon in terms of new privacy measures that are rolling out. We talked a little bit about with Verizon Media. that some of the browser cookies are going to be going away. There's also a movement by Apple pretty soon where they are going to be making different types of user tracking and opt-in rather than an opt-out, which is very privacy friendly, but also introduces some challenges for companies in this area. So I'm very interested in learning, I guess maybe a bit more about new types of data that are becoming more important, and then also maybe what some of you all would have to say about maybe some of the data that might be going away shortly. And then Elaine, I'm interested in what you have to say particularly on this, since this really does kind of intersect with your company's major role.
Yes. So two questions about the I follow you or so type of data. I say that there is this general perception that the more data, the better, the more the merrier. The more you collect, the more insight you can extract, or the more experiments you can conduct. I will certainly not contradict that statement, although in certain cases when you have too much data, you may fall into data swamps. But yes, I mean, there is this statement, but at the same time, and I think this is an important point when we design our products as well, you have to abide by certain rules. And GDPR provides you some principles you need to abide by. You know, that starts with purpose limitation and the data minimization. So you collect when you need to collect. Okay, so everything starts, in other words, by the use case. What is the use case that you want to implement? And when you know where you want to go, then that derives the kind of data that you collect. Okay, that's the way you can protect as well the privacy of your customers. So in terms of data sources, I mentioned previously the TV data or the viewership data. That is a lot of potential. We believe a lot of potential because it gives you the pulse of the service in real time. Okay, but for a player like us that deals with the whole platform, the end-to-end approach to the platform components, you know, there are other use cases. Look at the video player. It's certainly a very important piece of technology that we sell. We have a video player that is deployed across millions of devices worldwide, dozens of millions of devices worldwide, and the customer of those players are asking questions about the quality of service, quality of experience. Okay, so that is certainly one very important component of a user experience, an overall user experience. So QoS, QoE requires certain type of data. Okay, so that's one example. Another example pertains to another side of our business. You know, content protection, security of the content. Okay, so people that deploy our multi-DRM solutions are interested in anomaly detection. Okay, either some changes in behaviors that are noticeable. Okay, look at password sharing. Every OTT vendor are faced with this problem of password sharing. Can we detect suspicious behaviors? Okay, and for that you need a certain type of data. So of course we can fuse everything, but again you have to start from the use case, and that would derive a kind of data you want. Now, with regard to your second question, which is about the changes in the mobile persistent anonymized profile that has been done, the IDFA change that Apple has announced. I think it's going to enter into force beginning next year. That for sure will have an impact on the way on the overall mobile ad tech and martech. I think it's interesting to see that in a snap of a finger, by this change in the policy of the IDFA, Apple will change dramatically the way ad tech and martech is organized in mobile and OTT. But I think at the end of the day, if you can do less advertising, so people will have to revert to the good old subscription-related use cases, in-app monetization, subscription again. And for that, you will need more retention. You will need more ways to drive ARPU up. Okay, so that relates to one of the points I may have made at the beginning. People, I mean, customers at the end of the day, service provider, we want this flexibility into business model. So it's not going to be only subscription. It's not going to be only ad. It's going to be a mix of both.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, that is, I think, where we see the market going as well. There's certainly a lot of pressure to have different types of revenue models, a hybrid model especially. We've seen the services with that approach really take off this year, I think. Peacock especially with the new Comcast offering. So I think I'm also interested in hearing what a few more of you have to say. I think we are running a little bit low on time, so I want to make sure that we at least capture a few extra perspectives. Renato, maybe you could share a little bit about your perspective here as well.
Yes. So for sure, the operational KPIs are important, and so I will not be spending time on what Elena just said, but I think there is actually something very important, especially from user experience point of view. So we have always been interested in understanding what you watch so that we can personalize the experience. A whole new data set that is going to be needed to take a look at is how you get to that content. So do you click on a vertical poster, horizontal, a landscape, a person? Do you click on a title? Do you search for it, or do you actually browse? So it's that's kind of new data. So we used to have consumption data. Now I think we should look also at a order of magnitude more, which is how people consume. That's actually very useful to drive a better personalization of the user experience. That's by far a new type of data, which is not very often available today. And again, growing on what Elaine was saying, it's not so much about the quantity of data. What I do see is that very often, I think it's like going to school. You learn 100 things, then you really only use 10. So we need companies to start collecting more data so that they become more capable of actually doing the data collection first. And then we understand what data is actually useful. It's hard to say upfront what's useful when nothing is being collected. So collecting just in time never works. You have to have the data and then understand what's to use. The last type of data, which is coming up as being more important also for understanding the user journey, is onboarding data, especially with this idea of free trial coming, free trial going. There was a very interested perspective from Parks about this in free trials. If you want to make sure that someone trials your service and stays, you have to get to the point right away. You can't wait weeks to collect enough data to start being engaged with the user. It has to happen right away. And if you do it wrong, if you start, for example, recommending wrong title, it is very evident that the quality of the user experience is bad. So the sooner you start having that onboarding data, for example, through a questionnaire or through data you might have something somewhere else, or through strategic question to the user, did you like this recommendation, yes or not, or collecting implicit negative feedback. So we need to look at a order of magnitude more of details about what we collect, about what the user is doing.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very important as well. So Michael, I'm interested in hearing your perspective. I'm afraid we are running short on time, so I'm going to try to save time for at least one audience question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I would agree with what everybody else has been saying, to be honest. I think that they're very valid points. Something that we've certainly started to see is that if you let customers know the purpose of the data that you want them to provide, if they see the value that that's going to provide them, then they're much more likely to let you have that data or to answer the questions you're asking. So I think we're certainly seeing a trend where if people can see that there is value in them giving you a certain piece of information, it may be better recommendations. It may be that their service can be tuned more to their needs and the personalization around it. That's certainly something that is driving a lot of the uptake that we're seeing. Certainly on the front end, it's been very common to just say, for example, a subscription is a subscription and you treat it as a subscription. You don't treat the person who has the subscription as an individual. You don't track their relationships if they have a family account. You don't track their viewing habits across that family account. And so treating people as individuals, understanding what they're really after, and then collecting data in different ways, again, showing them the value of what's going to be given to them if they give you certain amounts of data, that's starting to really grow. And even how you capture or you find out data from users is something that we're looking at, because it's very obvious that how you ask the question can have an impact on the answer that you get. So obviously you could just look at data, but as soon as you start measuring it in a particular way, how you measure it could actually impact the data that you get. So we're seeing a broad range of situations where you have to kind of think about how are you actually getting that data, how are you asking those questions, because that could have an impact.
That's very, very true. So we do have our top audience question in, and it's really addressed towards anyone who wants to answer it. So when do you see more forward-thinking ad formats and schemas becoming mainstream? So ad units really tailoring to devices and experiences with more engagement measurement and more accurate tracking across devices.
It's a great question. So, I mean, I'll give you exciting ad formats that I am seeing or am excited about, but I believe it's early and look forward to doing it. It's just in-stream clickable content where we can purchase. So it's really even more of an ad unit, but it's almost more of a commerce unit. Again, it's that company placing that content into the actual video stream, having it be clickable, having us be able to purchase it. I think that is eminently trackable. And that's the part I'm excited about seeing in here.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And then any other perspectives? We have maybe a minute before we are going to want to break for our networking rooms. Well, yes. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us here today. I think we had a really great discussion. Very much enjoyed hearing from all of you on your perspectives on these topics and on data and decision making really generally. So we have our marketing team that has been sharing a Zoom networking link in our chat box. We also have on our Swap Card platform a few links as well. So make sure everyone to join us for some very interesting conversations. And then hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Before we go, a special thank you to our great sponsors for really making this event possible. So special thanks to our research partner, Salesforce, gold sponsors, Comcast Technology Solutions, ContentWise, and Verizon Media. Our silver sponsor, UITV. Bronze sponsors, Amdocs Media, Panthera, and Verimatrix.